Have you heard of the Smiley Face Killers theory? It's been kicking around true crime circles for over 20 years. Basically, a couple retired NYP detectives named Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, along with a professor named Dr. Lee Gilbertson, think that a bunch of young guys who were found drowned in the Midwest and Northeast in the late 1990s to present weren't actually accidental drownings. They believe that these college kids were targeted by a group of serial killers who made it look like accidents. And the whole smiley face part? That comes from the graffiti they supposedly found near where the victims were put in the water, at least in the beginning. But is there really a gang of shadowy killers, or is it more likely that a bunch of people fell into rivers and lakes after having a few too many? Let's look into it. I've spent a lot of time looking into this, and I am going to spend this video debunking the smiley face killer theory. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here, and today we are back with a new video. Before we get into today's video, let's make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Let's make sure that you like and share this video. Share this video with anybody that you see producing content or talking about the smiley face killer theory. You know, if you see a video that's talking about the smiley face killer theory, just paste the URL of this video right there. Let's get the word out that this is probably not a real thing. Thanks. The smiley face killer theory originated with retired New York police detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte. Their investigation reportedly began with the 1997 death of Patrick McNeel, a Fordham University student who was found drowned in New York City. Gannon was not convinced by the official ruling of accidental drowning due to alcohol intoxication, and he began exploring the potential foul play and seeking connections to other similar deaths. Gannon and Duarte were later joined by another retired NYPD detective, Mike Donovan, and Dr. Lee Gilbertson, who is a criminal justice professor and gang expert from St. Cloud State University. Never heard of St. Cloud State. This core group actively promoted the theory through media appearances and investigations, with Gannon co-authoring a textbook, Case Studies in Drowning Forensics, which discusses related themes. They brought significant media attention to the cases, culminating in documentaries and series focused on their work. Although the actual active police, the people who do this stuff for a living, are mostly don't believe the theory. But it's got a massive group of people online who think the cops just are either lying or unable to crack these cases, and families who desperately want a better understanding of what happened to their loved ones, other than, oops, they drowned. And of course, the media love the idea of a good spooky story. So there are documentaries, podcasts, you name it, promoting the smiley face killers theory. The problem being, it seems like there's more people trying to get money and exploit the victims' families with this theory, rather than trying to actually come up with the truth. The whole theory basically comes down to a few big ideas about who the victims were, how the supposed killers operated, and whether there was some kind of organized group behind it all. Proponents of the theory claim that the victims share a distinct profile, typically young white males, often college students, aged 19 to 24, described as popular, intelligent, athletic, and successful. This perceived grouping is presented as evidence of targeted selection of these people. The alleged MO involves a complex series of events. Victims are supposedly targeted at bars or parties, often drugged, which is speculated to be with GHB or other substances, abducted, potentially using vans, held captive for a period, possibly tortured, murdered, and then deliberately placed in bodies of water. Dumping the bodies in water is claimed to be a method for destroying forensic evidence. The theory alleges that these are not isolated incidents, but the work of an organized group, described as a gang-like group with cells operating across numerous states, particularly along the I-94 corridor in the Midwest and Northeast. Some accounts suggest coordination via the dark web. The number of victims linked by proponents varies significantly in different reports, ranging from 40 to 50 initially to 70 or even as high as 250. It seems to me like the way that these cases are connected is shaky. The number of victims is always changing, and the locations are all over the place. And it makes you wonder if they're using the same standards to link everything together, or if the story is just evolving as it goes. The most distinct element and the source of the theory's name is the presence of specific graffiti near the recovery or supposed entry points into the water. The discovery of spray-painted smiley faces was the initial and most publicized link connecting the cases. Proponents initially cited finding these symbols near at least a dozen locations and interpreted them as a signature or taunt left by the killers. Apparently, they think that this drawing is a serial killer's calling card. Like the serial killer was saying something like, hey, have a nice swim, forever. Later proponents claim to have found other symbols, including the word Sinsiniwa associated with the deaths. They've stated that these other symbols were not widely disseminated to avoid copycats or alerting suspects. Some reports indicate that as a smiley face link faced criticism regarding its commonality, investigators began to downplay its importance, suggesting it represented only a fraction of the link symbols they had identified. This shift further contributes to the sense of an evolving theory adapting to scrutiny, rather than one built on consistent, verifiable markers from the outside. There's also sort of a shady thing that is, well, we know there's all these symbols located, but we're not going to tell you what they are. Now, there is a whole other happy face killer who you should not be confusing with these smiley face killers, because the happy face killer is for sure real. And he did use smiley faces, but he used them in his creepy confession letters. The happy face killer was named Keith Jesperson. Jesperson murdered at least 8 women, not young men, between 1990 and 1995, primarily through strangulation, not drowning. He earned his nickname by signing anonymous confession letters to the media and authorities with a hand-drawn smiley face. His methods, victimology, and use of symbols bear no resemblance to the claims made by the Smiley Face Killer theory proponents. The law enforcement consensus of these deaths is accidental drowning, and this is where the reality of the shakiness of this case sets in. The actual police who investigated these smiley faces said, no, these are just tragic accidents. You know, the kind that happens when younger people mix partying with proximity to large bodies of water. These weren't just hunches, they were based on things like autopsies, what the alcohol levels were, and what witnesses saw. The FBI's even been involved. And their official statement was that we have found zero evidence of a smiley-faced killer serial killer. None. And they've suggested that all of these are just alcohol-related mishaps. So the official word from pretty much everyone who actually looked at the evidence is that the deaths attributed to the smiley face killers is just a series of unfortunate accidents. So the theory needs you to ignore the conclusions of a whole bunch of independent investigations, and that's a pretty big ask if you're asking me, even for conspiracy theories. Take La Crosse, Wisconsin, for example. It became a focal point during a cluster of drowning deaths involving young men, primarily college students, between 1997 and the mid-2000s. The La Crosse Police Department was responsible for investigating at least 8 of these deaths. Despite the smiley face killer proponents including La Crosse victims like Lucas Homan in their narrative, the La Crosse Police Department's official findings starkly contradicted the theory. The department concluded that the deaths were tragic accidental drownings involving intoxicated individuals. The LCPD explicitly stated that no smiley face symbols were found in connection with any of the cases that they investigated. Facing community concern, including speculation about a serial killer, the LCPD held town hall meetings presenting their findings and focused efforts on addressing the underlying issue of excessive alcohol consumption near the river. This is a direct contradiction from an investigative agency in a key location, highlighting a major flaw in the theory's foundational claim. The smiley face killer proponents said there's a string of these drawings and they must be related. And the local police said, no, we investigated every single one, and guess what? No smiley faces, just a lot of college kids in a river. And they even had town hall meetings to say, seriously guys, it's probably just too much beer near the water. The smiley face killer theory also loved to point to Chicago, my hometown, as a center for these types of killings. A lot of these recent drownings got the conspiracy theorists' gears turning again, with whispers of creepy ride offers, but the Chicago Police Department didn't see an actual connection. Drownings in Chicago waterways have fueled renewed speculation online, often linking these deaths to the smiley face killer theory, sometimes citing reports of unsolicited ride offers near bars. However, the Chicago Police Department have stated that these deaths are not connected. Investigations into specific cases provide evidence supporting accidental drowning. For instance, the case of Christoph Zubert, the medical examination ruled the death of an accidental drowning with ethanol intoxication as a contributing factor. Police reviewed video footage reportedly showing Zubert falling into Lake Michigan. Similarly, another case, the case of Peter Salvino, detectives tracked his movements via surveillance cameras, which reportedly showed him walking through a harbor parking lot and into the lake. Investigators believed he may have been too intoxicated to save himself. Authorities also stated that the unsolicited ride offers and the drownings were unrelated. These examples demonstrate how specific evidence uncovered during official investigations often points towards accidental circumstances, countering the assumptions of foul play inherent in the smiley face killer theory. So you've got all these police departments, La Crosse, Chicago, even the FBI, saying, no, we don't believe there's a smiley face killer theory. So if you want to believe this theory, you've got to tell all these people who did this detective work that they're wrong. It looks like you have to take major logical leaps to connect all of these cases together. And even if you do that, you also have to add evidence that isn't there. Like the smiley face graffiti that the La Crosse cops say wasn't there. Critically examining the evidence reveals that the links of these disparate deaths under the umbrella of Smiley Face Killer theory is full of inconsistencies, logical fallacies, and a lack of any sort of support. So let's talk about these Smiley Face clues, or lack thereof. First off, smiley faces are everywhere. It's not exactly a rare or mysterious piece of graffiti. In fact, it's one of the easiest forms of graffiti to create. As criminal profile Pat Brown has said, it's not an unusual symbol. If you look in any area 5 square miles, I bet you could find a smiley face. And in fact, I bet if you walk around any urban area for a few minutes or maybe 10, 15 minutes, you would find smiley face graffiti somewhere in various contexts. Its presence near a body recovery site, particularly in an urban area or near a bridge where graffiti is prevalent, is likely to be coincidental. There's also no uniformity among the smiley faces found in the cases linked by the proponents. The smiley faces vary significantly in size, style, color, and paint application, and the lack of consistency makes it extremely difficult to establish a linkage based on a unique signature. In fact, it's not a signature. Smiley Face Killer theory believers acknowledge the dissimilarity, suggesting they could be the work of multiple individuals within the alleged network. However, this explanation lacks any identifiable pattern or supporting evidence, and appears to be just an after-the-fact justification for the lack of consistency. Really seems to me that when you point out an inconsistency to this theory, then there is an explanation to sort of build that inconsistency into the theory. These smiley faces are all over the place. They're big, small, wonky, perfect. It's not a secret code. Another massive flaw in the theory is the failure to establish a time-order relationship between the graffiti and the deaths. There's no proof that any of the smiley faces were painted at or immediately after the time the victims entered the water. Photographic evidence in some of the cases shows faded, worn paint, suggesting the graffiti predated the incident by years. In other instances, the graffiti was discovered months after the body recovery. Without establishing a clear temporal link, the graffiti cannot be credibly connected to the deaths. Forensic dating of paint is generally imprecise and often narrowing down to the year of origin. Also, in a bunch of these cases, no smiley faces were found at all. So they're acting like these smiley faces were painted right after the crime, but some of these smiley face paintings are old. Sometimes they found them months after the incident. The puzzle looks to me to be a bunch of pieces of cardboard that someone is trying to mash all together. The theory also lacks objective criteria defining how close the graffiti must be to the body recovery site, or estimated water entry point to be considered relevant. In some instances, the graffiti was nearby, while in others, it was quite distant. Estimating where a body entered the water, especially in flowing rivers, is imprecise. Bridges are often upstream from recovery sites, further complicating any assumed connection. How close does it need to be? A block? 10 miles? There's no explanation for this. Well, it's near some water, so therefore it's a smiley face killer. The significance of the word Sinsiniwa found near some sites is also questionable. Sinsiniwa is a relatively commonplace name of Native American origin appearing in various forms: streets, businesses, locations across multiple states. Its presence near a drowning site is far more likely to be coincidental than indicative of a killer's cryptic message. So, maybe it's not a creepy killer name. Maybe it's just a name. The combination of the commonality, inconsistency, unproven timing, and arbitrary proximity renders the graffiti evidence exceptionally bad as a basis for linking dozens of deaths. It fails fundamental requirements for linkage analysis in criminal investigations. Basically, they're trying to connect all these deaths across half the country with drawings, and these drawings are common, totally different from each other. It might have been there for forever, and they could be a block away or a mile away. It's like trying to build a case on an idea everyone knows who drew a stick figure secretly knows each other. This is just not how detective work works. The victim profile that has been emphasized by smiley face killer theorists: young, male, white, athletic, successful students, often intoxicated, aligns closely with the demographic known to be at higher risk for accidental drownings. Young males exhibit higher rates of risky behaviors, including binge drinking, and are statistically far more likely to drown than females. Therefore, the observable pattern of victims likely reflects this underlying statistical vulnerability rather than a targeted selection by a predatory group. Forensic claims made by proponents often conflict with the official findings or established scientific principles. For example, GHB. GHB occurs naturally in the human body, and post-mortem levels can be difficult to interpret definitively as evidence of external administration without context. Toxicology testing does not always routinely screen for GHB. Attributing its presence automatically to forced drugging as part of a homicide plot, especially when victims were known to be consuming alcohol, is speculative. Several cases highlighted by proponents feature contested forensic findings. In the Dakota James case, proponents and a privately hired pathologist pointed to alleged ligature marks on autopsy photos. However, the official medical examiner and district attorney concluded these marks were dried blood that washed off during the autopsy, an explanation that was supported by subsequent photos showing a clean neck with no underlying injury. Similar claims about decomposition rates being inconsistent with time in water are countered by the fact that cold water can significantly slow decomposition and preserve bodies. Interpretations of injuries by experts associated with the theory often differ from official autopsy findings. And perhaps the most significant forensic counterpoint is that the vast majority of the deceased individuals linked to the theory show no signs of trauma consistent with the alleged abduction, restraint, torture, or violent assault described in the Smiley Face Killer theory proponents' MO. The absence of such physical evidence across most cases strongly supports the conclusion of accidental drowning over homicide. The pattern observed and presented as evidence in the Smiley Face Killer theory suggests potential influence of confirmation bias. Ambiguous data points like the graffiti location or GHB levels appear to be interpreted in ways that support the pre-existing homicide theory, while contradictory evidence, like the lack of widespread trauma or official forensic rebuttals, is often downplayed or contested, or sometimes even used as proof that the theory is true. This is bad objective analysis, which should weigh all evidence impartially. Looking at statistical data on unintentional drowning provides context and offers a far better explanation for the deaths attributed to the Smiley Face Killer theory than a complex, unproven criminal conspiracy. So let's ditch the spooky serial killer. Turns out that there's a way simpler, way less murdery thing that could be going on with these drownings. Like that the real killer is drowning. Unintentional drowning is a significant public health issue in the United States. Annually, thousands of people die from unintentional drowning. Data from the CDC indicates that from 2005 to 2014, an average of 3,536 fatal, unintentional, non-boning drownings occurred each year, equating to about 10 deaths per day. More recent CDC data shows an increase, with over 4,500 people drowning annually from 2020 to 2022, representing approximately 500 more deaths each year compared to 2019. Unintentional drowning consistently ranks among the leading causes of unintentional injury death in the United States. Statistical data clearly identifies specific demographics at higher risk for unintentional drowning, aligning closely with the profile of individuals linked to the Smiley Face Killer theory. Males are disproportionately more likely to unintentionally drown, accounting for nearly 80% of all fatal drowning victims. CDC data shows that male drowning rates are consistently much higher than female rates across years. The highest rates of unintentional drowning death are among young children ages 1 to 4, but drowning remains a leading cause of unintentional death for older groups as well. Notably, young adults are significantly represented in this data. Drowning is one of the top 3 leading causes of unintentional injury death for persons aged 5 to 34. CDC data from 2019 to 2022 shows notable rates and significant increases in drowning deaths among groups such as 15 to 24 and 25 to 34. Data from 2015 shows unintentional injury, which includes drowning, as a leading cause of death for males aged 15 to 19. Alcohol consumption is a major contributing factor in a large percentage of drowning deaths among adolescents and adults. Studies in public health sources indicated that alcohol use is involved in up to 70% of deaths associated with water recreation. Alcohol is also implicated in nearly a quarter of emergency department visits for drowning and about 1/5 of reported boating deaths. Alcohol impairs critical functions needed for water safety, like balance, coordination, and judgment, with effects potentially heightened by environmental factors like sun exposure and heat. This is highly relevant, as many of the individuals in the cases linked to the Smiley Face Killer theory were last seen leaving bars or parties where alcohol consumption occurred. Further, CDC data indicates concerning trends of increasing alcohol-induced deaths in the United States, with a significant percentage increase observed among younger male groups under 45 in recent years. It's not just a hunch. Loads of these poor folks were last seen stumbling out of the bar. Alcohol is still a bigger menace than a Smiley Face Killer gang. The environments where the individuals disappeared often contained inherent risks. Many college towns and urban areas have bars and nightlife districts located near rivers, lakes, and other bodies of water. Access points to these waters may lack adequate barriers or fencing, especially during late at night. Poor lighting conditions combined with alcohol-induced disorientation can increase the risk of accidental falls into water. Cold water temperatures, which are common in the Midwest and Northeast during much of the year, can quickly lead to hypothermia and incapacitation, reducing survival chances even for strong swimmers. Law enforcement in areas like La Crosse documented numerous instances of preventing intoxicated individuals from wandering toward the river late at night, illustrating the truth of the risk. Some video evidence in the Chicago cases, which we discussed earlier, also supports accidental entry into the water. It comes down to Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is often the best. The data provides a more plausible and evidence-based account than the Smiley Face Killer's conspiracy theory. The facts are that young men drown at disproportionately higher rates, alcohol is frequently involved in adult drownings, and the circumstances of the victims often involve both alcohol consumption and proximity to water. This combination of known risk factors offers a straightforward explanation for the pattern of deaths without requiring the assumption of a vast, undetected network of serial killers. The profile is not evidence of targets, but rather a reflection of the demographic group most statistically likely to be involved in this type of tragic accident. Beyond statistical realities and official findings, the Smiley Face Killer theory faces significant criticisms from independent experts based on established principles of criminology and forensic science. Experienced criminal profiles and criminologists have expressed strong skepticism, arguing the alleged scenario does not align with known patterns of serial homicide. Criminal profiler Pat Brown, for instance, termed the theory ludicrous, stating the evidence does not fit what is understood about serial killers. Key discrepancies include motive. Typical serial killers' motive involved sexual gratification, power control, financial gain, or specific ideological missions. The Smiley Face Killer theory lacks a clear, consistent motive for the alleged killings. And while proponents sometimes speculate about motives like hatred of successful young men or even harvesting sperm, these are unsubstantiated theories. The alleged MO lacks elements common in thrill killing, such as prolonged torture of a conscious victim, bondage, or overt sexual activity. Serial murder is overwhelmingly perpetrated by individuals acting alone. The concept of a large organized group or gang operating across multiple states solely to commit serial drownings is highly strange and lacks a precedent in criminological literature. And drowning is not a typical method for homicide. Homicide by drowning is an extremely rare event, accounting for a very small fraction of all homicides in the United States. While homicidal drowning does occur, it most commonly involves intrafamilial victims, such as parents drowning children, rather than serial killers targeting unrelated adults. There are no documented cases of serial killers whose primary or exclusive method of killing is drowning. The inefficiency and difficulty of forcibly drowning resistant adult males, compared to other lethal methods, make it an unlikely choice for serial murder. A lot of the forensic assumptions underlying the Smiley Face Killer theory are also scientifically flawed. Water doesn't erase evidence. A central claim of proponents is that bodies are dumped in water specifically to wash away evidence. And this is a myth. While water can degrade certain types of evidence over time, it doesn't eliminate anything. Cold water, which is often present in the locations of these deaths, can actually act as a preservative, slowing decomposition and potentially preserving wound patterns, fiber evidence, and even latent fingerprints on skin. The general lack of significant forensic evidence indicating foul play on the recovered bodies is more consistent with accidental drowning than with homicides where evidence was supposedly washed away. There's a complete lack of actual factual evidence that substantiates the existence of a killer network. There is vagueness or fuzziness regarding the details of the evidence they claim to possess. Reports indicate that the proponents did not always contact the lead investigators, or even the families in some cases, before they publicly linked the victims to their theory. Reviews of media featuring the proponents suggest a tendency to cherry-pick evidence or argue with experts whose opinions do not align with their theory, which suggests to me to be confirmation bias. The combination of the implausibility, the rarity of homicidal drowning, forensic counterarguments, and other concerns undermines the credibility of the Smiley Face Killer theory. In fact, I would say it has no credibility at all. It deviates substantially from established knowledge regarding serial crime and organized criminal activity. The burden of proof rests squarely on those proposing such an extraordinary theory, a theory of a network, a massive network of serial killers. And given the lack of concrete evidence accepted by anybody other than proponents of this theory, it fails to meet the burden. Some of the specific cases most frequently associated with the Smiley Face Killer theory are Patrick McNeel, who from New York City in 1997. This case served as the genesis for Gannon's investigation. McNeel disappeared after a night out and was found in the East River over a month later. The official autopsy classified the death as undetermined, noting a blood alcohol content of 0.16. NYPD's consensus leaned towards accidental drowning. Gannon and proponents of the Smiley Face Killer theory allege McNeel was stalked, abducted, held, murdered, and possibly bound or burned, citing the difficulty crossing the FDR Drive while intoxicated and alleged fly larvae inconsistent with immediate drowning. However, these claims remain largely Gannon's interpretation, lacking independent verification or official validation. The manner of death officially remains undetermined accidental. Chris Jenkins, Minneapolis, 2002. Jenkins was a University of Minnesota student, and he disappeared on Halloween in 2002, and he was found in the Mississippi River 4 months later. It was initially ruled as an accident or self-unaliving, and his death was reclassified as a homicide in 2006 based on information from an incarcerated witness alleging Jenkins was thrown from a bridge. Proponents point to this reclassification as evidence that other drownings might also be misclassified homicides. However, this argument overlooks a crucial point explicitly stated by the Minneapolis Police Department at the time. They apologized for their initial assumption, but asserted that the homicide ruling in Jenkins' case was not believed to be related to other regional drownings or the Smiley Face Killer theory. The autopsy reportedly found no physical trauma consistent with torture alleged by some proponents. While ruled a homicide, it stands as an isolated case based on specific witness information and not a homicide conspiracy. Dakota James, Pittsburgh, 2017. James was a graduate student who disappeared in January 2017 and was found in the Ohio River 40 days later. The Allegheny County medical examiner ruled his death an accidental drowning. His family and Smiley Face Killer theory proponents, aided by the forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht, contested this, citing alleged ligature marks on autopsy photos and a perceived lack of decomposition inconsistent with 40 days in winter water. However, the medical examiner and district attorney Stephen Zappala officially rebutted these claims, stating that the marks were dried blood from the nose and mouth that pooled around the neck and washed off during the autopsy. And this finding was supported by comparing different sets of autopsy photos showing no underlying injury. They also noted cold water can preserve bodies. The family's decision to cremate the body precluded any possibility of re-examination. While Dr. Wecht advocated for an undetermined ruling, the official finding remains accidental drowning, with the DA stating the case is open, but not treated as a criminal homicide without new evidence. Lucas Homan, La Crosse, Wisconsin, 2006. Homan disappeared during Oktoberfest celebrations and was found 3 days later on the shore of the Mississippi River. Law enforcement ruled his death an accidental drowning with acute alcohol intoxication as a major factor. Smiley Face Killer proponents, working with experts featured in a docuseries, claimed Homan was only in the water for 3 to 12 hours, versus the 50 hours he had been missing, and had 4 head injuries consistent with being stomped by a boot. These claims directly contradict the official findings of La Crosse Police Department, which not only ruled the death accidental, but also explicitly stated no smiley faces were found related to any of the La Crosse drownings. The foul play narrative was based on the interpretations of experts that were hired for a docuseries, not official police or medical examiner reports. William Hurley, Boston, 2009. Hurley disappeared after leaving a Bruins game and was found in the Charles River 6 days later. His death was ruled an undetermined drowning. Autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to his head, eye socket, and leg, along with alcohol and GHB in his system. Police surveillance showed Hurley stumbling near the stadium before the disappearance, supporting the theory of an accidental fall. Smiley Face Killer proponents, working with toxicology and pathology experts, argued the GHB levels indicated administration. The injuries were inconsistent with a simple fall, and the body was found upstream against the current. However, GHB interpretation remains complex due to the natural post-mortem production. The injury analysis can be subjective, and river dynamics are also difficult to determine. The official ruling remains undetermined, reflecting insufficient evidence to confirm any specific manner of death, including homicide by an organized group. Several cases associated with the theory have official rulings of undetermined. While proponents may interpret this ambiguity as leaving room for foul play, it fundamentally signifies a lack of sufficient evidence to definitively conclude any manner of death, accident, self-unaliving, or homicide. It reflects limitations in the evidence in complex drowning scenarios, not positive proof of a Smiley Face Killer theory. The experts that have been hired by proponents or families raise questions about potential bias in the expert selection versus the weight of official or often peer-reviewed conclusions. Analyzing all this evidence debunks the Smiley Face Killer theory because there is a lack of any consistent forensic evidence. There are criminological inconsistencies, and specific cases rebut the existence of this theory. Based on the evidence, accidental drowning facilitated by alcohol intoxication and environmental hazards associated with late night activities near water is the most plausible, supported explanation for the overwhelming majority, if not all, of these cases. The appeal of the Smiley Face Killer theory, despite a lack of evidence, is attributed to the understandable anguish of grieving families seeking answers and accountability beyond a ruling of an accident, and the desire of people to want to believe in a criminal conspiracy, as well as the amplification of the narrative by true crime media and online communities who enjoy the mystery and sensationalism. Criticism regarding the proponent's delivery of concrete proof fuels skepticism about the theory's conclusion. So, while the Smiley Face Killer theory is a good story that has captured the public imagination, it fails in analysis based on the evidence. It relies on shaky connections, disputed evidence interpretations, and assumptions that contradict official findings, and it functions more effectively as an urban legend or conspiracy theory than a valid explanation for a series of tragic deaths. Promoting unsubstantiated theories like the Smiley Face Killers theory, while stemming from a desire for answers, has negative consequences. It generates unnecessary public fear, it misdirects attention from genuine risks associated with the alcohol consumption and water safety, and it complicates the grieving process for families by introducing doubt and conspiratorial narrative to their grief, to their tragedy. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Go ahead and follow me on Blue Sky and Twitter. My username there is The Spooky Lawyer. Follow me on TikTok. My username is AKBruce. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, send me an email. My email address is thespookyLawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to make a donation to the channel, there is a super thanks button in the YouTube toolbar. You can click it and make a donation. Any money that goes to this channel will go back into the channel to make better videos for you guys. I'm going to put the names of the people who donate to this channel here. Thank you very much. My current upload schedule is Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So check in on those days to see new videos that I've posted, or you can hit the bell near the subscribe button and be notified when I upload. So you'll get a direct push notification whenever I upload something to this YouTube channel. I do a premiere of the videos before the video comes out, where you can be the first to stream the video and join a live chat on those days that the video comes out, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. You should join us. It's a good time. You can talk to me and I will talk about various things while making the video that I thought were interesting. You might think that they're interesting too. You also support me by continuing to watch my videos, liking my videos, sharing my videos. All those things help a lot and mean a lot to me. It really does truly mean a lot to me that you watch my videos. And make sure that you stay spooky.